The phone buzzed once, then again. I was halfway through a sketch for a client when my mother's name lit the screen. Isabel Mercer. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken in weeks, and silence had become our default language. I hit speaker by accident, then froze. My father's voice bled through. Grant understands responsibility. Isabel, the restaurants, the properties they'll go to him. My pencil stopped moving. I stared at the wall as if the sound were coming from it. "And Ivy?" my mother asked quietly. A pause, long enough to make my chest tighten. "She's had enough from us already. You don't reward distance." The line clicked dead. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until the silence folded in on itself. I waited. Maybe she'd call back. Maybe I'd misheard. Instead, a new text appeared. "Mom, don't call or don't come. It's over between us." That was it. No punctuation. No why. Just final. My hand trembled as I set the phone down beside my tea. The cup rattled against the saucer. Steam curled upward, then vanished. I typed 2 words, "Got it," and hit send. For a while, I just sat there, staring at the faint reflection of my own face in the dark laptop screen. The desert outside was silent except for a low hum from the power lines. It felt too calm for what had just happened. I replayed the conversation in my head until every syllable cut deeper. Reward distance. As if leaving home for design school was treason, not survival. The text glowed again, read, then nothing. I whispered to the empty apartment. "You meant it this time." It wasn't anger that came first. It was a strange, hollow relief, like I'd been waiting years for someone to finally close the door so I could stop knocking. I looked around scattered sketches, an unfinished model of a restaurant interior, a life I'd built entirely without them. Still, the ache stayed. My phone buzzed one more time. A message from Grant. "Sorry you heard that, Ivy. It's just business stuff. You know how Dad is." I almost laughed. The casual cruelty of it. The way he made betrayal sound administrative. I turned the phone face down. The tea had gone cold. Outside, the night stretched wide and soundless. Somewhere between the last buzz and the silence that followed, I realized this was the moment everything had already changed. The next morning, I found an old Christmas photo tucked behind a stack of invoices on my desk, all of us in matching red sweaters. Dad Thomas Mercer stood in the center, arm around my mother, his other hand resting proudly on Grant's shoulder. I was on the edge of the frame, half turned, smiling at something outside the camera. That picture had hung in every one of Dad's restaurants, the flagship Mercer table downtown, and the 3 smaller ones scattered across Santa Fe. He said it made customers feel like they were part of a family. Grant used to joke, "You're welcome for the charm, sis. Without me, we'd just look like people who serve overpriced soup." Mom would laugh, soft and careful. "He's joking. Ivy, don't start." I never started anything. I just watched. At family dinners, Dad talked about expansion, profit margins, vendors. Mom handled payroll. Grant poured wine and entertained the guests. My job was to listen, nod, and clear plates when the staff was short. Once, I asked Dad if I could redesign one of the restaurant interiors, modernize the layout, bring in natural light. He didn't even look up from his notes. "You draw for fun. Ivy, business takes instinct." Grant leaned back, grinning. "Besides, the current design's working fine for people who actually eat here." I swallowed whatever I'd been about to say. Later that night, I overheard Mom telling Dad, "She just wants to be involved." "Involved," he said. She left. "You can't walk out on family, then ask for a seat at the table." They thought I couldn't hear, but walls in old adobe houses hold secrets like breath. The next morning, Grant sent me a picture of himself at the newest location. The caption read, "Mercer Legacy in Progress." I typed a reply. Legacy's a big word for borrowed money, but I never sent it. I just stared at the screen until it went dark, the family name glowing faintly in reflection. I was 14 the year Grant got the brand new mountain bike. It was red and spotless, delivered with a bow and a speech from Dad about hard work and reward. "Earned it," Dad said, clapping him on the shoulder. "That's how success feels." My own bike came 2 weeks later, from a garage sale down the road. Mom spray-painted it silver so it wouldn't look secondhand. "Now they match," she said, her smile thin but hopeful. Grant grinned, spinning the wheels of his new one. "Guess we know who the favorite investor is." I laughed, because back then, laughter was the only kind of defense I had. At 17, he crashed his first car while texting. Dad bought him another within a week. When I got a parking ticket that same year, I lost car privileges for a month. Dad called it teaching responsibility. By the time I graduated, the rules were clear. Grant made mistakes. I made disappointments. When I got accepted into the design program at the Rhode Island School of Design's Santa Fe extension, I came home waving the letter like oxygen. "I got in," I said, holding it out to Dad. He didn't look up from his ledger. "If you walk away from these restaurants, you walk away from this family." Mom stood beside him, eyes down. Grant leaned in the doorway, chewing an apple, enjoying the scene. "Maybe she can design menus or something," he said. I felt the blood rush to my face. "I'm not asking for permission." Dad closed the ledger slowly, the sound deliberate. Then, "Don't ask for help when it gets hard." I left that night. 1 suitcase, 1 sketchbook, the spray-painted bike chained behind the house. Mom hugged me at the door, briefly. "Call when you can," she whispered. I did. For a while, but the calls always went unanswered. Grant texted me once during my first semester. "Dad says you'll be back by Christmas." I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. That was the first time I realized leaving didn't make me free. It just made my silence easier for them to live with. The first real winter I spent alone in Santa Fe, the pipes in my apartment froze. I sat on the floor, wrapped in 2 coats, sketching layouts for a cafe I would probably never afford to open. Mom called that spring. Her voice was careful, too polite. "Ivy, it's your mother. The doctors found something. Nothing alarming yet. By June." I was wiring $38,000 to a clinic in Albuquerque. When I tried to visit, she said, "Just focus on your work. Honey, we'll be fine." Grant called instead. "She's getting better. Dad says you don't have to worry. I already paid for the treatment." "Oh," he said, surprised? "Well, thanks, I guess." When she went into remission, she texted thank you for everything. "Sweetie, no call, no visit, just that." A year later, Grant launched a food truck, Mercer on Wheels. He FaceTimed me, all enthusiasm and charm. "Need a small boost. Ivy, $20,000 to get through the first month. It's basically family equity." I told him I didn't have it. He laughed. "Come on, you're the responsible one. Help us keep the Mercer name alive." 2 weeks later, I sent him $25,000. By autumn, the truck folded. Dad called, "Equipment failure. Insurance won't cover it. Can you help with repairs at the main restaurant? How much? 15? Maybe 20? "I can cover 15. Make it 20, he said, and hung up. I sent the transfer that night. Months passed. No one mentioned the money. At Thanksgiving, Grant toasted family unity while I poured the wine I'd bought. "You always come through, Ivy," he said, smiling. "For what everything?" Mom laughed softly, and Dad raised his glass. I smiled, because not smiling would have ruined the picture. Later, when the dishes were cleared, I found Mom alone in the kitchen. "You never had to," she said, "but it means the world." "Does it?" She hesitated. "Your father just wants everyone to feel equal." I almost asked how equal felt when one person kept paying the bill, but I just nodded. That night, back in my apartment, I opened my bank app. The numbers stared back. Smaller each month. I whispered to the dark. Love shouldn't cost this much. Then I closed the screen, because there was no one left to bill. The invitation came by text. Dad, dinner Sunday. Business talk. No greeting, no question. Just expectation. When I arrived at Mercer Table, the dining room was half lit, the way Dad liked it dim enough to flatter him, bright enough for the investors. He was already seated with Mom and Grant, papers spread out between the wine glasses. "Glad you could make it," Dad said without looking up. "I didn't realize this was a meeting," I replied. Grant smirked. "Every dinner's a meeting when you own 4 restaurants." Mom smiled at the server, pretending everything was fine. "Sit, honey. We ordered your favorite." I sat. The table was set for 4, but only 3 plates had been served. Dad cleared his throat. "We're expanding. New location in Taos. We need $60,000 to cover renovations until the investors finalize." $60,000, I repeated. "A bridge loan," he said, like it was casual. "You've always believed in this family's future." I waited for someone to mention repayment. No one did. "Maybe I could help in another way," I said carefully. "The layout, lighting, concept, Taos has its own rhythm." We don't need sketches." Dad interrupted. "We need loyalty." Grant lifted his glass. "She's an artist." "Dad, not everyone understands numbers." "I understand imbalance." I said, "Then you'll understand why we need this." Grant shot back. Mom touched my hand. "Sweetheart, it's just business. You're part of this family. Always will be. Until I say no." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Dad's jaw tightened. "You're taking this personally," he said. "It's personal money," I said quietly. "Mine." The silence stretched. Grant leaned back, amused. "You've been doing well." "Ivy, spread the love around." I looked at him, at the wine he'd poured into my glass before I arrived. "This family doesn't need my love," I said. "It needs a budget." Dad set his fork down, slow and deliberate. "If you can't support us, don't stand in the way." I wouldn't dream of it. When the check came, I reached for it out of habit. None of them stopped me. Outside, the night air was thin and sharp. My phone buzzed Grant's message. "Thanks again, sis. You always come through." I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, because I finally understood that gratitude was just another bill I would never see paid. A week after that dinner, I realized I had left my old design portfolio at my parents' house. The presentation I was building for a new client needed those sketches. I told myself I would be quick, just in and out. No talking. The Mercer house looked smaller than I remembered, but the lights were on and the smell of Mom's roast drifted through the open window. For a moment, the air felt familiar, safe. I stepped inside quietly. From the dining room, I heard my name. "Ivy's been distant for years," Dad said. His tone was calm, almost proud. "She chose her path. She paid for my treatment." "Thomas," Mom answered softly. The scrape of silverware on plates followed. "That was her choice," he said. "You don't reward someone for doing what they should have done out of love." Grant laughed, a low, satisfied sound. "So it's official, then I'm the heir. Everything goes to you," Dad replied. "The house, the restaurants, the accounts. You've earned it." My heart hammered against my ribs. I gripped the banister to keep my balance. "But what about Ivy?" Mom whispered. "She's had enough from us already." Dad said, "You can't build a legacy on sentiment." "Guess I better start practicing my signature," Grant said. They laughed. The sound cut through me like glass. I backed away slowly. The wood floor creaked under my heel, and I froze. No one noticed. At the door, I caught a glimpse of the dining table, Grant leaning back in Dad's chair, Mom silent between them. She looked older, smaller. When Dad poured wine into Grant's glass, she didn't lift her eyes. I left before they could see me. The drive home was a blur of headlights and empty road. By the time I parked, my hands were shaking too hard to unlock the door. I sat in the dark car until the engine's ticking faded. Inside, my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. Don't call or don't come. It's over between us. No punctuation. No explanation. I stared at the screen until the words lost meaning. Then I played her last voicemail, her voice light. Casual. Hi, sweetie. Dinner at 7. Love you. I pressed delete. Grant texted moments later. You shouldn't have come by. Dad's upset. I left my portfolio. I replied, You'll get it later. Let things cool off. I typed sure but didn't send it. I poured tea, then set the cup down untouched. The silence felt like something alive, moving in the walls. When the screen dimmed again, I whispered the only words that came to me. Got it. And this time, I meant them. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the apartment felt too loud, the refrigerator hum, the wind pressing against the window, my own heartbeat. By dawn, I had stopped trying to rest and opened my laptop instead. On the screen, a list of automatic payments filled the page: restaurant utilities, insurance premiums, credit cards tied to the business, even Mom's prescriptions. Every line had my name attached. I had been their silent account for years. The cursor blinked beside the first entry. I stared at it until the edges of the letters blurred. Then I clicked cancel. The confirmation box appeared. Are you sure? I clicked yes. Another one, then another. You can't build a legacy on sentiment. Dad's voice echoed in my head. Click, cancel, yes. The sound became rhythmic, almost musical, each confirmation tone sharper than the last. By the 5th, I stopped trembling. By the 10th, I was breathing normally again. Every click is a goodbye, I whispered. When the last line disappeared, I leaned back in the chair. My pulse slowed, steady for the first time in months. I opened a second folder, the business proposal they'd laughed at during dinner last year. Pages of cost analyses, design renderings, sustainability plans, all the things they said were art projects. I scrolled through it, remembering Dad's dismissal. We don't need sketches. We need loyalty. Maybe loyalty was just another subscription to cancel. I found the contact card for Orion Hospitality Group, the man I'd met months ago at a sustainability conference in San Diego. I dialed before I could overthink it. He answered on the second ring. Orion Group. This is Daniel. Hi, it's Ivy Mercer. We met at the hospitality summit. You mentioned you were exploring new eco-friendly design partners. A pause, then recognition in his tone. Of course. You said you were building a prototype proposal. I finished it. I said, would you have time to review it this week tomorrow morning? 11. When I hung up, my hands were steady. The quiet around me no longer felt like emptiness. It felt like space. By afternoon, the phone started ringing again. Grant first. You turned off the payments. Dad's furious. Fix it. Ivy. They're your businesses. Grant. Handle it. You can't just walk away. I already did. Then Mom called. I didn't answer. Dad emailed. Subject urgent. Restore payments immediately. I closed the laptop. That night, I opened my account balance. Months of late nights and underpaid contracts looked small, but they were mine earned, untouched by anyone else's name. Outside, the desert wind carried sand against the windows like a soft drumbeat. I sat in the half-light and whispered to the quiet, not anymore. By morning, the messages had tripled, but I didn't open them. I brewed coffee, reviewed my presentation slides, and for the first time in my life, felt ready to walk into a room where my name was finally the headline. By the next morning, my phone was a battlefield. 42 missed calls before 9. I turned it face down and focused on the proposal slides open on my laptop. At 11. Orion Hospitality signed the deal. $620,000. A real contract, with my name spelled correctly and no one else's signature beside it. I sat in the parking lot afterward, breathing through the tremor in my hands. It wasn't victory. It was relief, the quiet kind that comes after years of holding your breath. By evening, the phone began again. Dad, then Mom, then Grant. I let it ring until the voicemail icon filled the screen. When I finally checked the messages, Dad's voice cracked halfway through. "You have no idea what you've done. The restaurants are on the line. Call me back immediately." Grant's was shorter. "You selfish brat. Fix this." Mom's tone was almost tender. "Sweetheart, please call us. This isn't like you." I deleted all three. At the office that night, as I packed my laptop, the garage lights flickered. I heard footsteps. Grant stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, face pale and tight. "You've been ignoring us." "I've been working," I said, keeping my voice even. "Turn the payments back on." "No." He took a step closer. "You think you can just walk away? You think you're better than us?" I met his eyes. "No, Grant. I just stopped pretending we're family." His jaw flexed. "Dad says we'll get lawyers involved." "Good," I said. "That means you'll finally pay for something yourself." Footsteps echoed from the stairwell. My coworker, Tom, appeared, holding his car keys. "Everything okay?" "Ivy." "Fine," I said. Grant looked between us, then stepped back. "This isn't over." "Yes," I said quietly. "It is." He left without another word. 2 days later, someone knocked on my studio door. It was a woman, blonde hair messy, mascara smudged. She clutched a folder to her chest. "I'm Maya," she said, "Grant's fiancée. Or I was." I motioned for her to sit. "He doesn't know I'm here," she continued. "But you should see this." She opened the folder and slid a stack of documents toward me. Bank statements, wire transfers, receipts. "He's been stealing from your parents' accounts for 3 years. Over $240,000. I looked up. "You found this. I help with the bookkeeping." At first, I thought it was an accounting error, but it's all him. I can't marry someone who does this. Her hands shook. I reached for the folder. "You just gave me what I needed," I said. The next morning, another message from Dad arrived. "Dad family meeting, 2 o'clock, Bridge Cafe. No excuses." I replied, "I'll be there." When I walked in, rain streaked the cafe windows. The three of them sat together, Dad stiff, Mom small, Grant scrolling through his phone. "You're late," Dad said. "No," I answered. "Right on time." He leaned forward. "Your childish tantrum is destroying this family. You mean cutting off the money you took without asking Mom reached for my hand?" "Sweetheart, we can fix this. Just turn it back on." I slid the folder across the table. "Read first." Grant frowned, flipping through the papers. His smirk vanished. "Where did you get this?" "From someone tired of cleaning up after you." Dad snatched the folder, his face drained. "These numbers. This can't be." "It's real," I said. 3 years of theft. Silence. Then I placed another folder on the table, the Orion contract. They called my proposal brilliant. $620,000 brilliant. Mom's hand slipped from mine. Grant's voice rose. "You stole our idea. No, you rejected it. Big difference." Dad's voice was low, almost a growl. "You'll regret this, Ivy." I stood. "Maybe, but at least I'll regret it on my own terms." As I turned to leave, Mom whispered, "Ivy, please." I looked back at her, rain streaking down the glass behind us. "You told me not to call, not to come. Remember." Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Outside, the rain hit my face like applause. I didn't look back. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment with the contract folder beside me. The ink on my signature was barely dry. My phone blinked every few seconds, lighting the room like a warning. I didn't touch it. By morning, the silence felt steady, almost peaceful. The city was waking up outside distant traffic. A siren somewhere far away, but my world had gone still. Around noon, Aunt Jo called. Her voice carried that mix of gossip and concern that always came wrapped in sympathy. "Honey, I hate to be the one to say this, but it's all over town. The restaurants are closing." I waited. She filled the pause. Grant's facing embezzlement charges. $240,000 missing. Thomas is out, says he didn't know. Investors pulled everything. They're finished. I know. I said, "Your mother's been seen working part-time at Dillard's. Your father's doing repairs at a hardware store. It's a lot. They'll survive," I said quietly. "They asked about you," she added. "Said they finally understand." I almost laughed. Understanding comes cheap when the bills stop arriving. "Ivy, they're still your family. Not anymore." She hesitated, then sighed. "I'll tell them you're doing fine. Tell them I'm working." I said, "That's all they ever wanted from me anyway." When the call ended, I opened my banking app. The payment from Orion had cleared $620,000 in black, not red. My reflection shimmered on the screen, tired eyes. Steady hands. I poured a glass of wine and turned off my phone. The quiet spread through the apartment like something alive. But this time it wasn't loneliness. It was mine. By the next evening, an email came from an unknown address. The subject line read, "We're sorry." No message, no signature, just those two words. I stared at them until the screen dimmed, then closed the laptop. I whispered into the dark. Peace costs more than they ever paid. The room stayed silent, but for once, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. 6 months passed before I heard another word from anyone. Then a postcard arrived, no return address, just a photo of the old Mercer table, windows boarded up. Across the front, in my mother's handwriting, it said, "Take care of yourself." I placed it on my desk beside a fresh set of blueprints stamped Mercer Interiors, my company, my name. That morning, sunlight poured through the wide glass windows of my new studio, touching the rolls of sketches spread across the table. My assistant, Claire, poked her head in. "The clients from Orion are here. They loved the prototype. Tell them I'll be right there." When she left, I stared at the photo again. Dad's shadow still visible behind the old restaurant's doorframe. Grant's smirk half hidden by the glare. I thought of how they'd built everything on debt, pride, and my silence. Then I picked up the card and whispered, "Got it." I slid it into a drawer and turned back to my blueprints. Outside the studio, laughter carried down the hall, my team finishing up another project. I heard my own voice joining theirs, lighter than it used to be. The phone buzzed once, a new message. Unknown number. "We're proud of you." I didn't reply. I didn't delete it either. I just let it sit there, unread, between past and future, before walking out to greet the clients. I paused at the doorway and looked around the studio one last time. Clean lines, open space, no ghosts left to answer to. For the first time, I wasn't proving anything. I was simply living it. I smiled, quietly, and stepped into the light.